Picture the spring of 1979. To the average kid on the street, KISS was still the invincible army in platform boots. They were comic book heroes come to life. But if you could peel back the glossy surface of that famous Dynasty album cover, you wouldn't find a band of brothers. You'd find a war zone. This is the moment the hottest band in the world actually froze over. The two leaders, Simmons and Stanley, were desperately trying to steer the ship through the disco era. But the spaceman, Ace Frehley, wasn't following orders anymore. He had just done the impossible. He proved he was the most popular member of the band when left to his own devices. And that success didn't bring them closer together. It tore them apart. This isn't just a story about a guitar player recording a song. It's about a man finding his voice at the exact moment he realized he didn't need the band that made him famous. Welcome back to Next Wave Vision 92. We are stepping back into the smoke-filled studios of the late 70s to decode the human stories buried in the mix. Today, we're opening the file on what I like to call the Ace Frehley factor. The Dynasty era is a strange time for KISS fans. It's often remembered as the beginning of the end. You had Criss, the Catman, struggling with injuries and personal demons, effectively becoming a ghost on his own album. You had the band chasing a polished, radio-friendly pop sound that alienated their hard rock core. But if you ignore the disco beats of I Was Made for Lovin' You for a second and focus on Ace Frehley, you see a completely different narrative. You see a guy who was historically sidelined, suddenly puffing out his chest and taking control. Today, we're going to look at how Ace's surprise solo success in 1978 gave him the leverage to effectively hijack the Dynasty sessions. We'll explore how he isolated himself to create some of the best work of his career, and we'll deep dive into his cover of the Rolling Stones' 2000 Man, a track that serves as his declaration of independence. If you love rock history that digs a little deeper than the headlines, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Now, let's get into the session. To really understand the tension in the room during 1979, we have to look at the scoreboard from 1978. KISS did something crazy that year. They released 4 solo albums on the same day. Now, publicly, the band said this was a celebration of their individual talents. But let's be real, it was a contest. It was a massive ego check. For years, the internal hierarchy of KISS was set in stone. Simmons and Stanley were the generals. They wrote the hits, they did the interviews, they steered the ship. Ace Frehley and Criss were the soldiers. Talented, sure, but often treated like employees who were lucky to be there. Ace, in particular, was often dismissed as the lazy one, the guy who'd rather play cards and drink than worry about business. So, when those albums dropped, everyone expected Gene and Paul to dominate. But that's not what happened. Ace Frehley's album didn't just do well, it blew the others out of the water. It was the only one to be certified platinum solely on its own merits at the time. His single, New York Groove, a cover of a Russ Ballard song, shot up to number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100. Think about the human side of that for a moment. Imagine you're the guy in the office who never gets taken seriously. Your bosses are always micromanaging you, telling you how to do your job. Then, you all get the same assignment, and you absolutely crush them. You outperform the bosses. That feeling of validation must have been intoxicating for Ace. Critics who usually tore KISS apart were suddenly praising Ace. They loved his power pop sensibilities. They loved that his record didn't take itself too seriously. It was just great rock and roll. For the first time in his career, Ace Frehley had tangible proof that he was a star on his own. He didn't need the makeup, and he didn't need the Gene and Paul machine to sell records. But success is a tricky thing in a band dynamic. When Ace walked back into the rehearsal room for the next KISS album, he wasn't the same guy. He wasn't the quiet spaceman anymore, he had leverage. And in the music business, leverage is dangerous. It shifts the gravity. The other guys knew it, and Ace knew it. He walked into 1979 with a chip on his shoulder and a platinum record in his back pocket, ready to demand his share of the spotlight. This brings us to the Dynasty sessions in early 1979. The band hired producer Vinnie Poncia to helm the record. Vinnie was a pop guy. He wanted Polish. He wanted radio hits. This was the era of disco, and the band's management wanted to ride that wave. The vibe in the studio was disjointed, to say the least. Peter Criss was in a bad way. Between a serious car accident and escalating substance abuse issues, his playing just wasn't up to par. It got so bad that they quietly brought in a session drummer to replace him on almost the entire album. That drummer was Anton Fig. Now, here is where the story gets interesting. Anton wasn't just some random session cat, he was Ace's drummer. He had played on Ace's solo album. So when Ace stepped into the booth to record his songs for Dynasty, he wasn't playing with KISS. He was reuniting his own solo band. Ace managed to secure 3 lead vocals on Dynasty: 2000 Man, Hard Times, and Save Your Love. To put that in perspective, Gene Simmons, the demon, the face of the band, only sang lead on 2 tracks. That is a massive shift in power. The lazy guitar player was now carrying a huge chunk of the album's vocal weight. And Ace didn't stop at vocals. He didn't trust Gene or Paul to get the feel right on his songs. He wanted that specific, loose, hard rock groove he had found on his solo record. So Ace played the bass on all 3 of his tracks. He played all the rhythm guitars. He played all the solos. He was essentially working as an independent contractor. He would come in, often at night when the others weren't there, lay down his tracks with Anton Fig, and leave. There was no collaboration. There was no, "Hey guys, what do you think of this bridge?" It was isolationism. You have to wonder what was going through his head. On one hand, it's a power move. I'll do it myself. But on the other hand, it's incredibly lonely. The camaraderie that built the band in the early 70s was dead. Ace was building a fortress around his songs to protect them from the disco influence that was creeping into the rest of the record. He was creating a mini Ace Frehley solo album right in the middle of a KISS record. The crown jewel of Ace's work on Dynasty is undoubtedly 2000 Man. Now, this is a cover of a Rolling Stones song from their 1967 psychedelic album, Their Satanic Majesty's Request. If you listen to the Stones' original, it's acoustic, folk-tinged, and a little bit wandering. It's a product of the summer of love, but Ace heard something else in it. He heard a skeleton that he could dress up in leather and chrome. Ace took that song and completely overhauled it. He cranked the tempo. He added layers of distorted Gibson Les Pauls. He turned a quirky 60s tune into a driving hard rock anthem. And remember, this is on an album that opens with I Was Made for Lovin' You, a song designed for dance floors. 2000 Man was Ace planting his flag and saying, "We are a rock band, remember?" The lyrics fit Ace perfectly. The spaceman character was always about being from another world, disconnected from human time. I am a 2000 man slash, and my kids, they just don't understand me at all. It's almost prophetic. You can interpret those lyrics as Ace talking to the audience, or perhaps talking to his bandmates. He was moving at a different speed. He was on a different wavelength. While Gene and Paul were worrying about merchandising and movie deals, Ace just wanted to play loud rock and roll. He was the 2000 man stuck in a corporate boardroom. Critically, 2000 Man is often cited as the saving grace of Dynasty for the old school fans. It provided the grit. It proved that despite the polished production and the pop direction, the heart of the band, the dangerous, unpredictable element, was still beating. and it was beating in Ace Frehley's chest. When you hear that solo, you aren't hearing a guy who is asking for permission. You're hearing a guy who knows he's the best player in the room. It's a confident, swaggering performance that stands in stark contrast to the fragility of the band's lineup at the time. The Dynasty era was a paradox for Ace Frehley. It was the moment he had the most creative control, the most vocals, and the most confidence he'd ever had in KISS. But it was also the moment he realised he didn't belong there anymore. He won the battle for respect on Dynasty, but the war was already lost. The isolation he felt during these sessions would eventually lead him to quit the band entirely just a few years later. But for this brief moment in 1979, the spaceman wasn't just a sidekick, he was the captain. I want to hear from you. Do you think Ace's tracks on Dynasty hold up better than the rest of the album? And does 2000 Man beat the Stones' original? Let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the psychology of rock, smash that like button and subscribe for more. Until next time, keep the volume up.